That song?
The Motivator
The Motivator.
by T-Rex.
Put it up to the microphone. That's good.
Yeah.
I think we're here. Look at
I
this.
think we're
We're
here.
on.
Nice.
We're on. Chris
Yo,
Burton,
G. How you doing?
it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too, G,
Hey,
as
cheers,
always.
cheers. We don't have whiskey with us today, but we do have a good brew. So,
Indeed, you have made a fine brew. Thank you. And probably not
yeah, cheers.
drinking
Cheers.
time for me.
It's not drinking time for you.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Welcome, everyone. I have the famous, infamous Mr. Chris Burton here again, and we're going to be talking everything values today. Because, Chris, I
Ooh.
think what was really important last time we had this chat here,
Yep.
we just touched on a little bit of the values. And we're going to have a look at maybe some what Australian values are, what's important to Australia.
Yep.
I want to get your comment on that. I might challenge you on a few things.
Cool.
If you're up for it.
I'd be expecting that from you, G.
But apart from that, how's the week been? Did you go away, do anything? Did you do anything special?
But had a really lovely weekend. And had a gardening bee at my place.
No
Some family
way.
came around. We finished up some things and it's looking good.
For
You have to
people-
drop around?
Well, for people who don't know this, well, probably you shouldn't, but Chris just lives around the corner from me.
Yeah, exactly. It's so super convenient.
It is. And when I'm finished with you,
Yeah.
especially on a Thursday, I like going just down the road because there's a little pizza place there,
Oh, wood-fired pizza.
the Wood-Fired Pizza.
Grove,
So I just have a pizza.
rocking on.
That is,
It is good pizza.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we should get stuck in. I'm just checking
Yeah,
my
sure.
my volume and everything, and I think we're good to go.
Okay.
What do you
Can
want to
you
talk
hear me?
about first? Because I want to talk about so many things, and I want you to then come back tomorrow because I want to do another session with you. And if it's okay with you, I want you to come back again on Wednesday, and I'd like to do a third session. So I want to do 3 sessions because this is going to take a long time. Maybe keep them to about 30 minutes. You up for that?
I am
knew
if
you
you
would
are.
be. I know
yeah,
you would be.
I'm up for much.
The last time we met, we spoke about values, and then I remember I had to do a session somewhere with an organisation, and we started off talking about values and what they mean to you.
Yep.
How do we define values? What are they, and how do we embrace them? I think that's the question for you.
Very well, a good few questions. What they are, how we work with them, what they mean. We've been talking about the work I do in OD and organisational stuff. So yeah, we can chat about all them things.
All right, let's do that. So let's start off with. Should we have a look at the Australian values? Is that what we should look at, or maybe just
yeah.
define values first? What do you think?
I reckon definition's a good place to
Okay,
start.
what is a
yeah.
value?
Values and are a big part of culture. Basically, values are the things that are important to us. They're our beliefs. It's a pretty fundamental driver of who we are. Good definition looks at defining values as an abstract end state that sort of drives our thinking and our behaviour, and we can prioritise it. Some values are more important to me than others, and for you as well. And they're going to be different invariably. And a really key thing when we appreciate differences in our value prioritisation is around alignment. So that becomes a really important part. That the interesting thing with values, you can't tell me what to value. You can't tell me what's important. I can't tell you what's important. So I can't put up a list of values on a website or on a meeting room poster and say, well, you have to value this. What we can expect, though, especially in organisations, is an alignment. So we'll maybe talk about alignment as well.
The issue that I might have with values is that what I might value most, and I shouldn't compromise on my values. Is that what you're saying? I shouldn't?
Well, not necessarily compromise on your values. However, in context, especially in organisations, there should be a fair expectation of your colleagues that you are going to at least have some baseline behaviours that align with some agreed upon values. So that alignment of the behaviour and the values, what we understand the values to be around here in this context or in this subculture or this culture becomes really helpful.
So if I value something like freedom and autonomy and I don't know, I don't want a person to micromanage me.
Yep.
They might be those values because I'm intrinsically thinking that you will get the best out of me. You leave me alone, you give me the job description, you let me get on with it, I will do it. But the organisation might say, I want to know at each point of time where you're up to. So now I'm going, okay, now you're infringing on my values, and that's a very basic concept, what I'm saying here, but you're infringing on my values. I don't like the way this organisation works.
That happens heaps. Infringing, like, think of it more as, I mean, we put a lot of energy into defending our values or promoting them. And when we talk about things like freedom or autonomy, they're good reminders. This is an abstract end state that has got a different meaning for you than me. When you talk about freedom, for you that might be getting out on your bike. For me, it might look like something different. So if we can take a bit of time to understand, what do you mean by freedom? What do I mean? We can then start looking at alignment. Autonomy, you mentioned as well, is a big one. It's a value, again, a kind of an abstract state, but we get a bit closer because autonomy, I think we've got to, it's a bit less abstract because we can define it. And we know that things like autonomy, mastery, and purpose are big drivers of engagement. And most people, it's a pretty safe bet, will value in their own individual work having mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and be a bit more engaged.
I think I mean, I'm only looking introspectively at some things that, you know, within organisations, they may turn around and they may say something like, you know, we don't like your values, Gerald, and yet I'm still delivering the work that I'm supposed to deliver with high professionalism. But they go, I don't appreciate your values. You know, you're outspoken, Gerald. You know, you like to say your piece,
Absolutely.
and we don't like that. And so then what happens is that a person like Gerald then has to say, oh, okay, what I'll do is I'll modify my speech to suit the organisation, but I'm really, again, I am compromising on what I believe the most.
Well, I'm hearing more modifying. And modifying your behaviour and your comms and how you land as Gerald. You're just modifying that in order to help perhaps demonstrate that you at least understand the values that we've kind of collectively agreed are important around here. Back to the freedom and individualism, that perhaps part of that abstract end state of freedom for you elevates individualism a little bit higher than the collectivist values that might be in play.
There was a situation where I think what happens is you can go online and you can just type in list of, you know, the top 100 values.
Totally.
And then you can go from there and you pick your top values and you go, okay, ambitious, authoritative, leadership. They're my values, integrity, wisdom, all that sort of stuff. And then what are we supposed to do with that list of? So I've started off with a list of 100. I've got it down to now 20. What's the ideal number that I should be aiming for?
Awesome.
What is there a
great question?
Number?
Well, this is back to that introspection that you talked about and prioritization. There's hundreds of values. Often organizations try to whittle it down to 5 or 6, something that's manageable. And for an individual, 5 or 6, the top 3, even if you were to spend a bit of time focusing on those top 3 values that are important to you: autonomy, freedom, performance. What you can do is then say, well, okay, they're my values. How do they compare with these organizational values? And can I modify a little bit or just think mindfully about how I communicate with my colleagues so that this performance or professionalism that you're talking about, is that landing as professionalism? Or is that landing as, G just wants to be, you know, G just wants to stand out and shine, which is good, and having an appreciation that, well, bring it down a notch, join the collective, at least talk about we as opposed to I, those sorts of things.
Do you think that we have it the wrong way when we're doing an interview process? Like, you know, Chris is coming in for an interview and I'm asking Chris a whole bunch of questions. You know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, what is it that you enjoy doing? Tell us all those wonderful things. But we never really talk about values. Like, I don't think an organisation sits down and says, so, Gerald, tell me, what are your top 3 values? And then from there, they can work out, wow, he likes adventure. he likes freedom, and
Yeah.
he likes to be outspoken. That doesn't sit with us because we're not adventurous.
Yeah.
We're very risk averse.
That's the sort of thing you might modify in your...
That you just modify, is it?
Well, as part of a good interview preparation, maybe think about what they might ask. And these are good questions. These are good questions and can be... We talk about red flags and green flags. So think about that. And if you do your homework on the values of the organisation, because this is the thing, any organisation, just go to their website, type in their values, and you'll get a 20-page document of their vision and values statements and stuff. Have a quick look, see what they value, weave those values. Maybe a couple of values. I really value ambition and people first, and safety.
But
and for me, I value adventure.
Yeah, but isn't that now what I'm thinking is that if I go to work with you, Chris, and you've got your website up, and I have a look, I want to be associated with Chris's business, and I have a look at your values.
Yeah.
Wouldn't I then just go, if I want the job that bad, I will just mimic what Chris says?
Kinda. You'd at least show some reflection on what my values might mean, or what our values might mean.
So let's go one step further. Let's go now to a person who's coming from overseas, and the person who comes from overseas, pick any nation that you want, wants to integrate themselves into being an Australian. And so then they think, well, what is it to be Australian? So if I was to ask you that question, what does it mean to be Australian? What does that mean to you? And it's going to mean a lot of different things to different people.
Absolutely. Being an Australian, being in Australia, and great point about international cultures and subcultures, because in Australia we are so incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
We are fortunate to be here in so many ways. And this is a good lead in into we can actually direct our convo into the Australian values.
Yeah.
But for me, appreciating with gratitude the fortune that we have here in Brisbane, Queensland, the whole country is very lucky.
Yeah.
And the value of mateship, I think that idea of equality and mateship is I think a really great value as well.
Yeah, I saw for those who don't know, here in Australia we've got the referendum coming up on the 14th of October, which is it's a little tick box that will say, should we recognise our Indigenous culture with a voice to Parliament? And the question is simply, will we recognise our Indigenous elders or our Indigenous peoples and our First Nations?
Yeah.
And the question is yes or no. And now when you have a look at that question, it's really divisive, isn't it? The way I'm seeing it is it's dividing the nation. So what happened here just over the weekend here in Australia is that every state had their march.
Yep.
And as usual, we kind of march for what it is that we like.
Yep.
But we've really split the country down in this one here. So there may be a value for some people that says, I want freedom to be able to express myself. But of course, now when you have a look through all the socials, you start to see that there is, 5,000 or 20,000 people who are marching just for the yes vote. And then next week we'll have 5,000, 20,000 people just voting or just marching for the no vote. And so when we now look at what is Australia, I thought we were one. And I thought we, as an Australian people, our value is that we respect each other, but we come together as one. But I didn't see that over the weekend. I saw that we came together as 50%.
I think you're right that we come together as one. We are one.
We should come together as one.
We should. And you mentioned at the start, G, about challenging, because the whole divisiveness is something that I would challenge, because I think that's part of the whole no narrative is that it's got to be divisive, and any referendum is going to be. That's the point of it, whether it's about marriage equality, whether if we go back however long to the previous referendum on this sort of topic, any referendum is going to be decisive.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be. That's, I reckon, playing into the no narrative, because this is... Any referendum is going to be decisive. But if I think you go right back to it, it is about having hope for the future. And I think we can agree that on what's right. Again, the values might help us guide on that. Because I am horrified by the prospect of us as a nation voting no, and that whole bio-remorse, like Brexit, where, they make a call, it's divisive, there's 50-50 and a no social campaign, like let's leave Europe. And the no social campaign in particular is able to raise a voice compared to here in Australia. The Yes campaign is, I think, a bit more of a grassroots sort of strategy for their comms. So we have a situation where it is going to be divisive.
Yeah.
That's what referendums are designed to do. And this whole idea of, we spoke about this last time, if you don't know, vote no. No. That's it. Don't do your own research. I mean, just reflect, think about it. Do you want, in generations to come, let alone in a few years' time, for Australia to have voted no on this, one of only 100, whatever we spoke about last time, 160 developed countries that acknowledge their First Nation people officially in their constitutions, their official founding documents.
I think the only issue that I have with referendums, as an example, now the last referendum that I can recall that we had was the equality of marriage, wasn't it? What was actually the question? Should we acknowledge that same-sex couples can get married? Yeah. Here's my issue with this. Why do we need a referendum with that? Like now, I want you to think about this. If love is love, do I need a government to tell me whether I can get married or not? If you think about it in realistic terms, why do I need government's approval that I want to marry a person of my same sex? Do I need your approval? Do I need the country's approval with this? But it's only, I think what happens is that on the register, so now I can go in and register, which is a government register. I can now sign a form where the government now tells me that I am now part of the system. But did I need a referendum to tell me who I love? Like if I'm gay, I should be able to say, hey, I'm going to get married and I don't need your approval. And I think the same thing happens with most referendums, is that and the referendum is only going to be in place when the government decides that we want to make a decision based on what the Australian people want. Well, the Australian people want love. Yeah. Okay, and I don't need your approval,
Everyone
Mr. and
wants
Mrs.
love.
Government.
Yes.
No, I don't.
Yeah, our duly elected parliament and our rigorously elected parliament.
Parliament. So the issue I have is that once government gets their filthy little hands onto something where they go, we can make money out of this, because for each person that gets married, they have to register. And then that now becomes part of a conglomeration of fees and taxes.
The monetisation to fund the process and what we've got to go through. Yeah, this is good. All good points.
Good points.
Yeah, absolutely. And love is love. And the validation of our union is what occurs perhaps through a referendum process, is that we give people a voice and say, well, what do you reckon? And in that case, it was great that people said
but I guess that is why now we're talking about values. That is why it's so divisive, is that some people value that they want to vote no. They just go, oh, look, I don't want this to happen. I think it's illegal. I think they've been overrepresented. They're spending $33 billion a year anyway. So what has it amounted to? It's done nothing for the country. Okay. And plus we've got...
No, it hasn't. It has helped the country by validating the union between two people, and love is love, as you said. Yeah. The whole idea of the bureaucracy that goes with any process, whether it's the voice, whether it's equal marriages, that's going to come at a cost regardless. And again, that's part of the no campaign. It's going to be costly. And it's any process like that is going to cost us. And we've got a tax system that does that, and getting fees is part of it, monetisation for the government. The whole idea that this is also giving that referendum result to Parliament, that we've elected these people at federal and then also at state. Remember that this is happening at federal, state, and local level here in Australia. So different levels have different jurisdictions, I suppose. I'm not a parliamentary legal person, but there's certainly levels at which this is going to be administered and determined by the Parliament. Again, the determination of how we're going to do this is up to Parliament to decide, and they've got mechanisms lined up. This is back to the whole perhaps fallacy that there's no details, and there isn't yet, but there's certainly very well published and transparent models that we know works. And this is it. It's about looking at what works compared to what doesn't work. This would be different if there wasn't a gap. If we knew that the initiatives that we're spending all this money on were working and they're not as well as we want to. And that's because that consultation process that the voice provides is not as good as it could be. And this is about what could be. What we could develop, and we know that we have systems, processes, methods that can work, and it's not right to say it's not going to work because it's not working now. There's still gaps.
And I value your contribution in that, and I don't have an answer for it. I don't. I'm not the person who's written the legislation or who wants to change the Constitution. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
All I'm thinking is like you're thinking. Is I'm looking at what don't we normally say? Our past really determines what happens in our future.
Yeah.
And the way I see things, it's just the way I see things. And,
Yep.
and again, this is just my value, is that I see that there's $33 billion being spent in health and in education and in roads and in infrastructure for the Indigenous culture. But
Yep.
they're saying that none of that is being funneled down to us.
That's
what they're saying.
Exactly. And again, this is what the voice committees will do at federal, state, and so basically at the local level, we'll get the folk that we're working with. At the state level, we'll get maybe a dozen of the groups around our state. At the federal level, we'll get a couple of dozen representatives. So we're building that up. The consultation process are the things that we have on track. That has already happened in the voice to the Uluru Statement. Developing that followed a similar process of just consultation, asking people, how can we best deliver good outcomes in your context? Tell us, and we'll listen, we'll validate that your context is different to the mindset I have about what you should be doing. So, looking at the past, it hasn't worked as well as we might have hoped. Let's look at the present, because that's all we got. And that's what the consultation is now. This is why it matters now. And then the future is coming. Let's look constructively. Let's look optimistically at what could happen. What hope can we bring forward?
So let's play a hypothetical before we have a look at because I want to have a look at the Australian values, because that's going to be cool. Let's do a hypothetical. What if 14th of October comes around, and look, statistics and polls that I'm seeing at the moment is that there's like somewhere between 55 to 60% that are voting no, and the rest are going to be voting yes. Let's just hypothetically say that the no vote gets
It's
up.
on the line, yeah.
What happens now? So 16th of October, 2 days later, Albanese gets up and he says, it's with deep regret that our Australian, and he will say it's deep regret that the Australian public has voted against it. So it's probably with not deep regret, but it's probably 60% have said we don't want it. So then talk me through what happens on the 16th. How do you think we will be perceived? Because I heard that Australians will then be perceived as a racist nation.
Yep, we will be. And you're right. Are you doing speech writing for Albo G?
Yeah, maybe next week.
Yeah, mate. That's because that's good. Deep regret, definitely. I think we should all feel deep regret, buyer remorse.
But let me stick with that.
Yeah.
If the Australian public, 60% of the Australian public have voted a emphatic no, then
Horrifying.
but then for Albanese to say it's with deep regret,
Yep.
but the Australian people have spoken.
It'd be deep regret for the 40%.
Or would it be deep regret for the government? Because their narrative is quite different.
Well, that's a good point regarding the whole politicization of this.
Absolutely.
It isn't about hope and fear. It is about left and right. It's about politics.
Because I can see it now, and I'm going to be a speechwriter for Albanese. It'll be something with the Australian people have stood up and made their voices heard, and it is with
40% of it.
Deep regret. You know that 98% of people have voted no, or whatever it will be, or whatever it will be. I'm making that up. But on the same token, if the yes vote gets up, it'll be Australia has spoken. So one is emphatic yes, joy, and the other one is sorrow and despair.
Xenophobia remains.
Do you think xenophobia will remain?
Well,
because I don't consider myself, and I think a lot of the people who are maybe on the fence, I don't think they're a racist. I think that they're just confused.
Yes.
Yeah.
The confusion, absolutely. Yeah. And that is part of the No campaign's, misinformation that we spoke about the other day.
Yeah.
It's about creating confusion. And, what was the point that you made around lots of people just being unclear? It's about clarity of what's going on. Yeah. And racist... acknowledge that there is systemic racism in most systems around the world, against First Nation people in particular, against all subcultures or different cultures. And I think that just a fear of the unknown is kind of about back to informing yourself and validating differences. So so values might be a good place to start with that.
Tom, I want to jump into this. Let's have a look at these Australian values. You should be able to see those on your screen there. Is that big enough for you? Can you see that? Because I think I can see that. Let me make it a bit bigger. I don't know if that works. That might work. Let's have a read of this. Australian values are based on freedom, respect, fairness, and equality of opportunity. Are central to our community, remaining a secure, prosperous and peaceful place to live. Our values define and shape our country, and they are a reason why so many people want to become Australian citizens. Our democratic institutions and shared Australian values have created our peaceful and stable society. Are we a peaceful and stable society?
Comparatively, for sure. Prosperous.
Yes.
Yeah, we are very lucky. That's what I mean.
Yeah. As in, we're very democratic, aren't we? So we have a democratic voice.
Give everyone a voice. That's what democracy is about. Yeah,
it's what it should be about.
Good old Greeks developing a pretty handy system.
I want you to clarify something for me because I don't know if I understand it, and I'm going to go with the Australian value.
Yep.
Oops, let me just go down. Australian values include respect for the freedom and dignity of the individual. How do you think we're going with that one there?
Selectively, good. Some individuals are treated much better than others, though, and dignity, validation of all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we can all. That's the thing with values and this aspirational aspect of them. And this is a good example, actually, of a values statement, like a handful, a manageable number of key points that we go from abstract to something a bit more clearer.
Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at another one there. It says the second one there is freedom of religion, including the freedom to not follow a particular religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of association. How do you think we're going on that?
Pretty good. Comparatively, again, I mean, some countries have theocracies and autocracies. Yeah. Here we have that freedom. I could be agnostic. Yeah. I could be a Jedi. I come from a Christian background, so the Christian values are sort of inform my prioritization. I mean, I'm probably more humanistic, sort of secular humanist than anything these days. But yeah,
let's have a look at another one here. It's got commitment to the rule of law, which means that all people are subjected to the law and should obey it. I agree. Parliamentary.
That's an interesting one when you look at gaps in incarceration and justice stats, that value perhaps doesn't apply equitably, or
Is that because the people who are incarcerated commit more crimes?
because of systemic racism?
Do you think so?
Yeah.
You
well,
don't.
Well, it's part
Because I'm a
of it.
realist.
Yeah.
I think if if Gerald, who's maybe say a Catholic, and you're a Protestant,
Yep.
And we're going to say equality of, we're not going to be racist against our religions, but hey, I see that there's more Protestants incarcerated, I would say, because they're committing more of the crimes.
Yeah, because they're being oppressed by the Catholics. In some countries, Ireland is a really great example of religious. Back to the conflict that we were talking about with two sides, and we try to manufacture, and the theocracies try to build up this narrative that, well, we hate you Catholics and I'm a Protestant. Our differences are very, very sort of fine line with what prayers we say and how we say our prayers, but let's buff that up and reinforce that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we've got so many of these values here. Parliamentary democracy, whereby our laws are determined by parliaments elected by the people. Yep. So we've elected them.
We'll put our faith in them to develop the processes based on good evidence.
Yep. Those laws being paramount and overriding by any inconsistent religions or secular laws.
Yep.
Yep.
You can't say, well, in my system of beliefs, if you're not wearing a headdress, then you're morally corrupt.
Right.
And so you should be beaten up by our morality police, and if you die, that's terrible, but comes with the territory. You should follow our values and theocracy.
It's probably this next one that I maybe want to ask a question on. It's got here: we value equality of opportunity for all people, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, race, national or ethnic origin. So equality of opportunity. What's the difference between the equality of opportunity and equality of outcome?
Well, I guess two different steps in the process. Firstly, you can't get a good outcome if you're not being supported or your position isn't being validated or acknowledged, especially when your background might be so different to mine that I could probably never really understand where you've set your values from or what you've gone through, and generational history, those sorts of things. The fact that your Protestant family, you're Catholic. Your Catholic family expressed your religion in a particular way. You practiced your faith in a different way, or as part of your community building, you'd like to go out and have whiskies after Mass. There's a bit of a ritual, but sometimes you'd have a bit too much. You'd come home, you'd be perhaps, not in the most constructive state of mind, and you might shout or get violent.
So
and that follows generations back to ancestry. This is one of the interesting considerations, by the way, when we look at the voice, that our first steps are about embracing yes, and what's to come is going to be generational. The truth telling about what has happened in our past, what has happened in First Nation past, needs to be something that has to be dealt with.
Yeah,
but that's a different thing.
Yeah, that's a longer and a bigger conversation.
And we need to take those things, though, into consideration with the output.
Yeah.
I can't compare your output with mine if you are if part of your history means that you've been held back a little bit.
Yeah. So I think we can agree on something, which is I would like equality of opportunity for everyone.
Yep.
Which is everyone should get the same education. They should get the same living standards. They should get the same health care. They should get the same.
Yep.
There should not be a mix of you're going to get more than what I am because of your background and your history and your...
Yep. And this is, I guess, where mateship comes in. The idea that, yes, everyone having the same would be good. And what yes will mean is that we can tailor what different people need based on where they're coming from, so that and it's not about equality where everyone gets the same. It's about equity, where we acknowledge that some folk might need more to get the same outcomes.
Isn't that cheating?
No, why do you think that?
Well, because that would seem to me that for one, black people can't swim. As
white people can't jump? What do you?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So if I was to see, all right,
Stereotypes.
it is a stereotype, but we don't see too many black people in the Olympics swimming to get first, do we? Mm-hmm. Like there's well, name one. We can't.
And this is about physiology and muscle types, and we see lots of great runners, long distance runners, sprinters.
So
how white folk can't run? Well,
in our physiology, but would it be fair then to say that Gerald, who's now a 65-year-old male, is going to be competing against Usain Bolt? But hey, for equality of outcome for equality of opportunity, we're going to put him on the 60-meter line, and then go.
Yep.
Now I'll win. Maybe I won't. I'm thinking, can I do that in 3 seconds?
As a hypothetical, we could be talking all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair point. That's
the equality.
Yeah.
That's when I see equity. I see equity as a form of cheating, which is you said, let's prop this person up because they don't have the same opportunity. But I said, let's give the opportunity to everyone equally and fairly. Everyone should be starting on a slate.
Fair? Is it a fair go? Anyway, as I said, we could maybe talk about what it looks like in organisations.
Well, what does it look like in organisations?
Yeah.
So
similar.
Okay, it does, yeah.
And I think it's when we start looking at values in organisations and we look at culture and they're pretty interwoven. It looks the same. Organisations usually have a few top values that they espouse, that they say these really matter, and it's about alignment. It is about aligning those. So we can.
So how do we seriously? How do we overcome these hurdles though? And I know we're running out of time, are we? I think we're going way over time.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And I want
focus
because this is good. This is good.
Yeah.
Because I think these are the conversations that I like to have to say. You know, we don't have to agree, but we have the right to be able to challenge and debate.
Absolutely, that's what a convo is.
That's what a good
dialogue.
Conversation. Good dialogue.
Yeah, good dialogue.
But how if there is this difference that we have in just a room here that we have, how are we going to deal with it on an organisational basis?
Break it down.
And then how do we do it on a state basis?
Good question.
Federal? How do we do that?
Good question. Let's have a look.
Okay.
Organisational values. Now, they matter. If you go to any, like we said, you go to their website. Qantas, for example, it's important. I mean, Alan Joyce at the moment and Vanessa coming in, this whole idea of what do their values tell them about the situation that they're in.
Yeah.
So you can look at values. Most organisations will have a handful. Things like safety is always paramount.
Number one.
We talk about like innovation, ambition, and that sort of stuff. We value our people. So it is a matter though of going from that abstract end state to something more specific. Now, did you have that slide?
I do.
Just simply to walk through how you might process values.
Let's have a look at this slide. Hang on, let me get rid of that one here. It is it this one here? Is that the one?
Yeah.
All right.
So
talk me through this.
This is more an activity, a workip exercise, basically process of facilitation or group facilitation.
All right.
Designed as a group. Now, you can have this if you want, if anyone's interested.
Thank you.
It's a deck. So we typically start with just stating the organisational values. So we might have innovation, or in this case, use ambitious.
Okay.
And now we might have gone away as an executive and had a love in and spoken about what sounds like good values and said, well, what's our current global description? We're never content with the status quo. You could read that.
Yeah.
So what we would do is say, well, okay, that's great at the upper echelons, at the national level or at headquarters in London or Canberra. But what does it actually mean here? So the aim is to define that value in our terms, in our context.
Right.
So First thing I do, just on the ends, and so there's a workshop activity,
Yeah.
give them a heads up in advance, so team meeting, briefing, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Look at how important this value is and how satisfied we are with how we do it. And that's on the ends there. And it could
So
be...
what's first?
Yeah.
Just clarify.
Yeah.
You've got name. What the name
Oh.
is the value?
No. And this is where, like, you put that on a flip chart. We'll
Yep.
talk about that.
Yep.
And people come up and write their names. Basically,
Oh, their name. Like I'll put Gerald.
correct. And
Right,
I
gotcha,
put
gotcha.
Chris.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I think, well, ambitious is really important around here.
Yeah.
So I might rate it as 8 or 9. And
Right.
this whole idea of starting to quantify it as well means we can clarify, go from abstract to something quantifiable.
Yeah.
And I'd put mine, you'd put yours. The scale is typically from 10 to 0.
Right.
But if you put minus, like, you might think that ambition is very unimportant to us because
Yeah.
I'm going to drive myself.
Yes.
So we'd put our names down the side. We then think about how satisfied we are, or how satisfied I am with how we do it, how we express ambition around here. Again, put our names up. And numerically, so we can quantify it. Those names might be in the same sort of order. You might think that ambition doesn't matter, so you got a low level of evaluating. We do it fine here. We're ambitious enough, but I might think ambition is the most important thing. But I'm very dissatisfied. I'm very critical, so I'm -2.
Right.
And we can get your score of 8 or 4.5, and look at the range within the group,
Okay.
and we can say, well, what are the ones we all agree are important? Let's focus on them. Or what are the ones that we're all dissatisfied with? That could be a starting point. What are the ones where the standard deviation amongst the group is high? Let's talk about that.
So, for example, let's pick another one. Let's just say timeliness.
Yeah.
Okay. So timeliness, I would have is very important.
Yep.
And then on the other end, where satisfaction is, what does that mean there? So Gerald now sees the satisfaction that I'm getting out of being timely is low.
It may be that you tend to be more critical because that value of timeliness
Yeah.
is higher priority importance. You'll be a bit more critical of my timekeeping. If I'm 5 minutes late,
Yeah.
you might, well, that's Chris, I can cop that. But
Yeah.
10 minutes, units of time become interesting there.
Yes.
How
yeah.
late do I need to be before you see me as unprofessional?
Oh, yeah. Have you got a better example? Like that timeless isn't a good example. Have you got a better example that you can say, look, let me give you an example of how one organisation had its importance of values, but nobody was really satisfied with it.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know of one? I'm just trying to think of an organisation that I might have been with.
I think working with lots of different organisations, you'll see that the values that are espoused as being the most important things, we tend to say, okay, let's say we value our people, and we like that's our top 3 values. I'll say, okay, I'll call you on that. What am I seeing here? You talk about. Back to Qantas, I mean, they value things like togetherness. It's pretty abstract. But what does togetherness mean when the baggage handlers go on strike?
Yeah.
And we need to consider, well, togetherness is fine in the executive. The senior leadership team is very together. And the baggage handlers are very together and might be even militant, those baggage handlers. And that's where that malalignment comes in.
Yeah.
Is that as a baggage handler, I'm very dissatisfied. I'm being told that people are important, but I don't see it.
There's so much to talk about with values, isn't there? Because I guess one person's value, it's like motivation, isn't it? One person's motivation is
values
another
are
person's...
motivators. Yeah.
Is a demotivator, or it's a...
Totally.
One person's success is another person's, downfall.
Obstacle. One person's opportunity is another person's obstacle.
Yeah, that's it. So it's so difficult. Wow. I think when I come back in my next life, I want to come back as an animal.
Yeah. Well, we are all animals. That's great.
Yeah, that's true.
And let's look at what this means for the individual. Look at if you want to. I mean, we could wrap up that last slide just very quickly.
Yeah, let's have a look.
Because the next step, once we've discussed our differences, we can look at what this ambitious. What could it be, and what do we not want it to be? So it's a bit like saying, okay, and this might be typical feedback from a group. Ambition could be taking us out of our comfort zone. It could look like it's us being driven to better things. It could be exciting, open to everyone, not just the SLT. And any other thoughts you might add? And what we don't want ambition, what we agree that ambition isn't, is like just the SLT. We will set the goals. Everyone can set goals at any level. Being ambitious doesn't have to be mundane. It just has to be boring. We need clarity and we need clear goals and any other comments we come up in the group. And then the last thing is to take all of that, talk about it, and finalize what does ambition mean for us in our context, whether it's the state level or the branch level, and bearing in mind that this doesn't have to be corporates. This could be not-for-profits talking about this stuff. Sole practitioners, do it as your own reflective exercise. Or rural fire service could get together as a team, because the last block on that poster was looking at what a group might come up with. I can't actually see it on screen.
Hang on, let me bring it up a bit.
It's just the very last slot. If you go down, So for us, ambition, we've gone from head office globally. Ambition is to challenge the status quo. We know what that means. And achieve the unbelievable. So getting the group together to come up with, and that might be one person's suggestions or some wordsmithing. You could wordsmith these for ages, but just capture it quickly. So that's a good exercise. And if we move on to leadership and individuals, that's where things get very tailored as well. Individuals will look at leadership development. So that whole idea that, as you said, there's plenty of criteria and good self-report questionnaires. You can just Google free personal values profile, and you'll come up with stacks. Barrett used to have a good free one, values like strengths and those sorts of things, values, where you could get your top 3, top 20, whatever. I think there is a charge for that. You get what you paid for, so there is a cost, and lots of free ones. Apologies to the organisational psychometricians and retailers, because you get what you paid for with feedback and data and evidence, and there are some very good tools that may be a bit costly, and there's lots of free tools as well. Go online, do some reflection, do some action, do some feedback, get some feedback on yourself, and then the idea of using that as an input into your leadership development. That's the in the development goals that we spoke about last time.
There's something that I think we haven't got time for it today, but I think what I want to talk to you about tomorrow, because I want to get you back tomorrow, is I want to talk to you more about candor and frankness. If that's okay with you. If we can talk... That tracks, that fits with all of this. With all of this.
If you've got that IGG, the inner development goals, we can have just a very quick overview of that.
Have a look at it now?
Just very quickly. I know we're short for time.
There we go.
Cool. Five, we'll keep it high level at the 5 factors. What we're talking about with values is part of being. We spoke about teamwork and collaboration skills. So communication, inclusiveness, intercultural competence, these all become part of it. We'll talk maybe about trust tomorrow with that. And a lot of it comes back to this idea of being as a primary factor of those 5 factors that will lead to results. Back to acting and actually getting results. Unless we've got the foundation in knowing ourselves, it may not always smoothly translate to outcomes.
So I love this, So being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. Gosh, we covered so much in such a short period of time, and I hate pushing and rushing, but I know you've got to go, and I must get on my bike and see if I can ride
Adventure
somewhere.
Yourself?
Adventure is my middle name. It would be good to have something like that.
Gerald A. Porshman.
That's too funny. Chris, I'll see you tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
All right, I'll leave this up as we go, and it's going to be a good one. I can't wait.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Nice one.
Bye-bye.